Call of Duty is using AI art now. That's how far things have gone. Not just art. Yeah, I mean, no. If the whole game was AI, it would probably be better. So it's probably not AI.
Okay, everyone, today's story is actually pretty damn big. So here's what's going on, right? Players are getting refunds for Call of Duty this year. And It's not because of the absurd campaign or some sort of matchmaking disaster. No, they are demanding their money back because they're finding the game is filled with AI-generated art that was never mentioned in the marketing. And what matters there is they're actually getting the refunds. But it's not just Call of Duty, because Ubisoft is also under fire. And that's because
what a surprise.
While we're talking about AI slop, right?
So we've got Activision and Ubisoft. Two of the you talk about gold standards of gaming. Well, these are the brown standards of gaming.
Right? The real problem isn't necessarily the output. It isn't necessarily the intents that people say. Really, we should start looking at what people actually do, and we should look at the process, because in reality, it's the management of these companies that are getting just as sloppy as the games. Alright, so this year's Call of Duty is once again full of generative AI slop, because whenever I think Call of Duty, I think of piss, filter, poisoned, Ghibli-adjacent fantasy art of some peasants impressing...
It's so obvious that it's AI generated, too. They do not give a fuck. They totally phoned this in. They ran out of time making the art for it, and they just straight up AI generated the frames for the achievement things. This is in Call of Duty. Yeah, it's not even good AI art. Yeah, you can make good AI art, but this isn't even it. Like, you did... a 5-year-old could have done this.
Guard by catching a catfish. Yeah. That's Call of Duty, all right.
Oh, yeah.
And the images you're seeing right now are basically those of calling.
And also, why is it that they're in, like, a fantasy universe? Like, these are, like, peasants in, like, a medieval era with a knight's helmet. Why is this in Call of Duty if it's in the future with machine guns?
Cards. They're floating around social media
what is
in the wake
this?
of the Black Ops 7 launch, because people have looked at them and thought, oh my god, what the hell is this?
Unbelievably
it's
lazy,
weird,
yes.
tonally mismatched stuff that bears all the hallmarks of cheaply produced and barely reviewed generated art. And look, this isn't some blind see AI get really angry thing. No, sure, there's people who could probably do this stuff tastefully.
Yeah.
What actually matters is this is a huge set of games where it's not being done tastefully, and that's actually happening at scale. Now, the funny thing about this with Call of Duty is that after the mess of Black Ops 6, audiences kind of expected this stuff, right? We all expected...
Wow, look at that, guys.
The generic Steam AI disclosure thing. We all expected Activision responding to the news outlets, confirming something, that they didn't do anything wrong, and denying anything that they could have done wrong. And the reason why is actually because we've already had all of this happen this very year.
Yeah, with the AI generated stuff, right?
Where Associate Creative Director Miles Leslie told IGN that everything Gen AI that people saw in Black Ops 6 was there, quote, by accident, and that was never the intention. And the claim that he makes is that these are basically just tools to help artists, but that the outputs are never to make it in-game.
They're not to replace, but they do not replace any fantastic team members. How long are they going to pussyfoot? This is the reason why China and these other countries are beating American companies, because in America they're too worried about being too efficient. They're worried, oh my god, wait, we can't use AI. People on Twitter don't agree with AI. So instead of actually trying to make the game good, instead of trying to make a good product, no, instead of that, they're going around and getting upset and apologizing for it. Jesus, this is embarrassing.
That would mean that, say, our many-fingered zombie Santa friend was only meant to be a placeholder. Never should have shipped. You know, just a placeholder asset meant to sit there and reflect the vibe that the artists wanted, until eventually a human could come in and replace it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now, look, I'm happy enough to steelman this guy's position, and I'm all for artists having better tools and less drudgery in their job. But this keeps on happening, and I think that means we should be quite a bit more suspicious. So
I bet that AI generation for video games is probably a lot farther along than you would imagine. And I bet with many of these AAA games, there is more things that are generated with AI than you see. And I think that here's a good way to look at it, right? Do you really think that in a game where they've blatantly used AI and multiple other things, do you really think that the only times that they've used it, you can see it. There's no way you could logically come to that conclusion, right? You would assume, obviously, some of the AI is good enough to where it blends in. So you're only seeing the worst offenders because good AI is invisible.
Said it keeps happening. Obviously, that's right for Call of Duty, but it's also an industry-wide thing. First, there's a game that I should love, and that's Anno 1117 Pax Romana. It should be a bright spot in Ubisoft's
People
calendar,
like this game,
but
yeah.
there are problems with the game, sadly. There's an unfinished campaign, some odd art decisions, and for today's purposes, an AI art problem. You see, Anno's art tends to be gorgeous, right? And that's why seeing it replaced with a thoughtless imitation with no experiential humanity behind it is a big nope for me. That's the type of art where even if it was to look pretty...
Well, they didn't even go through it. Like, what's embarrassing is that you could have used AI to generate the image and then go through and edit it to make sure that there aren't any inconsistencies. But they didn't even do that. And I think that's really what the main story of this is. It's not even the fact that they used AI. It's the fact that they used AI and they didn't even try to edit it. They didn't try to improve it. They didn't try to do anything. This building's made me think of ball pit. Yeah, really. And there's also developers that use AI without telling the company. Yeah, no doubt. But what I'm saying is that a lot of these companies, they're phoning it in on like a massive level. Like there's people there's like random gimmick accounts on Twitter that put more effort into it than a AAA games company. That's crazy.
A feeling in me. So here's actually what went down with this. Something in these loading screens caught people's eye.
Yeah.
Basically, something was up. They were off-putting. We saw these renderings of somewhat human-shaped shadow figures. And
What's his arm
doing? This is not a Ghost Adventures episode. Just random-ass shadow figures.
Yeah.
Now, that led to people then checking for the Steam AI disclosure. The disclosure was there, and of course, it's a first for the Anno series.
Yep, there you go.
Now, I want you to remember that this is all happening at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that's no problem. And also, like, here's the truth. Players very clearly do not care about this. That's why the game was rated 94. So the entire, like, upset, oh my God, it's AI, this is completely created by media. And it's created by media because they're operating in their own best interest. They don't want to get replaced by AI. And so they're trying to create an ecosystem where companies are afraid to use AI. But the truth is that the AI complainers are a vast vocal minority. Solid take. Yeah, that's just it. 94% by who? By the actual players, people that played the game.
Ubisoft are catching some flack for allegedly machine translating the German language options for the game. So, yeah, the Germans aren't pleased, and I suspect that also extends to the official German.
Like, I don't even care about this, if you want me to be honest, because, like, there are other games. Like, video games have always had bad translations. All Your Base Are Belong to Us was a bad translation, for example. So, like, this isn't even really an AI problem. This is what this really shows is it is shoddy development that they just don't care about. That's the thing, is they never even went back and looked through this to make sure that it was good. That's, I think, the big story, not even the AI.
By which I mean the government. I say that because the German government awarded Ubisoft a 5.7 million euro cultural development grant in 2023. So they probably won't like the look of this weird slop job with the damn German translation. Now, admittedly, that grant's likely because the game's development team is a large German employer, and that would mean that the government would want to back them. But hey, if you're a French publisher making a historical strategy game, do I really have to say it? Don't piss off the Germans. Come on, it keeps on going badly when we do that. Jokes aside.
Yeah, because like that one time, and the time before that,
it is a bad look on both counts. And that is why Ubisoft did actually respond to things. So according to them, the offending scenes were just generative AI placeholders that slipped through review. Now, they just slipped in, but thankfully that now they are being fixed. But when you actually look at the fixes, you see they're not done in a way that would inspire hope, because they're just touching up the offending mistakes with what's there, rather than replacing it fully, which...
Exactly. That's what they should have done. And this is the future. Like, you're not going to convince a company to hire a bunch of artists to draw something that they can generate in 3 seconds. It's just not going to happen. Like, why would somebody do something in 10 hours that would take normally 10 seconds? I mean, you've got to be retarded, right? Of course that's not what's going to happen. AI will not replace people. People will learn how to use AI that will replace people. Well, AI, like this is what AI will do. AI will give one person the ability to do 5 people's jobs. So it's not, it will replace people, but it won't be a 100% replacement rate. It will be like an 80 to 90% replacement rate at high levels of efficiency. That's what's happening.
I think suggests that whenever push comes to shove, yeah, they actually are happy to just do the quick, dirty thing and cut some corners. Can't imagine any of us find that particularly surprising. But what's maybe more surprising is just how sloppy they're getting, how far the standards are falling. So look, it's not necessarily the technology itself that is turning people's stomachs. It can also be the quality use of that technology, and in this case, the sheer sloppiness, the lack of care. Now, we've heard the placeholder excuse multiple times this year. Hell, even Expedition 33. Yes, that game, even it fell foul of it. Basically, there's
Expedition 33 used generative AI for these textures. Why would I don't know? It doesn't look like it's generative AI to me. I mean, I don't know how you can tell that.
An in-game poster that was found turned out to be a placeholder, and it was replaced a week after launch. I suppose it's the more innocuous of today's 3 main examples.
Excellent. It was indeed placeholders were replaced with custom assets. The other AI-generated poster was present. I think that in a lot of these cases, they're not actually placeholders. They're just there in case people find them and then they'll replace them. Who cares? I don't think anybody cares. That's the thing, is that people don't care about AI. They care about bad AI.
Here's basically what happens. Devs use generative AI tools to create a almost production-ready asset. They then populate the game. They put those assets
trace
in,
it or something like that.
You know what? Because they've used the quickly made AI placeholder thing, actually, when the placeholders are in, they probably do get a bunch of the vibe that they're looking for.
Yeah, sure.
But then what happens is, there's a release date for the game. There is a rush to ship. And that can mean that those assets may never get replaced. So you can see why they do it. You can even see some benefits over the traditional style placeholder, which was meant to be so egregious and obvious that you really just couldn't ship them. You know, just a blank texture saying delete me or something. That would mean that people would notice the placeholder is there and it wouldn't get shipped. And sometimes...
another good example is where wins meet. Somebody brought this up, is that they have like AI chatbots in the game. And like some other things with the game are AI as well. Like, for example, like the riddles that they do. And I think nobody really complains about that. Nobody cares because it's done in a way that isn't really negative for the game. So I love chatting with them. Yeah, I've never even done it before. I've just heard about it and like people have told me about it. So the real future is good AI. The future is not having individual artists do things themselves. That's going away whether you like it or not. Now, you'll always have games that have that, but I think in a lot of cases that will not be that will not be the norm.
Yeah, a mistake would happen. Something would slip in. Maybe a wrong build is uploaded or human error happens. Now that happens even without Gen AI built placeholders. But when the placeholders, if you were to sort of squint your eye and look at them, almost look like the finished product.
Yeah, if you're not paying
a lot harder.
Yeah, if you don't pay attention and you're not really looking at it, you will think that it looks fine.
Get that part of the process right. And look, not everyone hates Gen AI on principle. That's a totally fine thing to think, by the way. I mean, if people broadly did, we wouldn't be praising Game of the Year nominee Expedition 33, which did decide to use that stuff as a part of its pipeline.
It's not relevant.
Not intended to be final results, but as a part of its pipeline. So here's the thing, right? Plenty of people will tell you that if you hate
the truth is that like having something as part of your pipeline means that that thing is probably removing a person's job. This is what I think a lot of people don't understand, is that even if the final product isn't AI, if you're using AI in your development process, you're doing so in order to circumvent or to basically streamline some human behavior. And that's generally what happens. Arc Raiders is another good example too. A game is good, so the majority don't really care that much. Yeah, exactly. And that's it. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like, just because it's not the final product doesn't mean that it's not removing somebody's job.
AI, that's okay. Just don't buy those games. Right,
yeah.
Easy enough. There's tons of options out there.
I hate these fucking mobs.
And sure, audiences do have different standards. We actually saw that recently with Arc Raiders, where some people drew their personal line there, others didn't.
No people drew a personal line with Arc Raiders. It's not true. It's not real. There was just like 10 people on Twitter talking about it. The game is massively successful, insanely successful. Nobody actually cared.
That is completely okay. Almost all things are actually a spectrum of belief. This isn't some
That's how it
binary
is.
AI good, AI
not
bad
real,
thing.
yeah.
But what I would say is that when the product itself becomes messy, or the company doesn't seem to care, or appears to be disrespectful of player time, well, then it is so much easier to
I think that AI will have the same, like AI encroaching in video games will be the same as microtransactions, where at the beginning you had some people who just simply refused to play video games with microtransactions, but then as more and more video games had microtransactions, those people had less places to go. And now almost every single video game has microtransactions, and there's almost nobody who actually refuses to play video games with microtransactions. And I think that AI will be the same, is that right now you're still having some people that will hardline against AI, but once their favorite series starts doing AI, do you really think that they're going to quit playing video games? Of course they're not. They're going to just probably just stick with it and complain for a while and then get used to it, and then that's the new normal. Like, that's what's going to happen, because that's what happened with microtransactions. LT couldn't be more wrong. Oh, I am right. I'm right about this. It's obvious I'm right about this, and time will prove me right again. It's obvious the way that people think.
Shift a player's position on that spectrum. And that's why, even if they do want to use these tools, the industry has got to hold themselves to a higher standard. Because whenever the generative AI placeholder art isn't replaced, and is just tidied or updated, it's actually kind of clear that functionally, those ended up not being placeholders.
Yep, exactly.
They actually were just a cut corner.
They just they said they were placeholders in order to make people not mad. If they could have shipped the game with AI art, they would have done it. I don't know why anybody's pretending like it's not. They're lying to you. They're lying to you because it's easier to lie to you and tell you what you want to hear rather than tell you the truth. Why would they tell you the truth if they could just lie to you and then make you agree with them? Yeah, of course. Yeah, new Gemini image generation looks very real. Well, yeah, it's just going to get better in general, right? And so I think that's what happens with anything else, for sure.
And pretending otherwise, I think, is what's actually frustrating people here.
Yeah.
Thus far, we've covered a big
People
reason
don't like
why
being
people are
gaslighted and lied to.
But I'd actually wager it goes far
But it works.
deeper than that. So let's dive in. Some people are fine with Gen AI whenever it is intentional or feels thoughtful. Now, you may remember the Screen Actors Guild voice actor strike. Just before that came to an end, Epic Games unveiled a chatbot-powered Darth Vader entry.
This was so good. Holy shit, this was amazing.
For Fortnite. Now, Epic used James
Making
Earl
him
Jones's
say the N-word
voice with his family's blessing, and then they ran it through an LLM trained on scraped internet text, which is why we could have Darth Vader reciting
Saying
the
the
story
N-word.
of Kingdom Hearts to us.
Very well, Sky. But I will not stop until I get to 200 sentences. The tale begins on the Destiny Islands, where young Sora and his friends Riku and Kairi dream of exploring new worlds beyond their idyllic home.
He's just talking, bro.
Strange thing. Maybe just like how Anno could approximate some Roman art, or Call of Duty could try to ape the Ghibli style, and people were mostly fine with it.
Yeah, nobody really
for
cares.
Fortnite. But from what I can tell, with COD and Anno,
well, it's because Fortnite was good. And also people are fine with it with Anno. That's why it had a 94 in the video game, in the Metacritic thing that he showed. The game was massively well received. It was really COD that was the bad one because the game was weird. That's it.
These hit people completely differently, and I think that's what gets us to the heart of this issue. What's different then? Well, I would say Vader was intentional as a product experience.
I think it's because Fortnite is good. I think it's actually that simple. Fortnite's a good game, so people don't care.
Sounds very buzzwordish, but what I mean is, it was a toy in a live service game like Fortnite. It was dropped, people did unhinged things for the first little while, they found the limits, stuff was patched up, but basically that was kind of the point. Goofy Vader was the sell, and they had permission from all of the major people involved. To be honest, the easiest way I can put this is, it was honest about being a form of throwaway funny slop. And I think that meant that people weren't as outraged, especially because of the permissions. Now, with that in mind, no wonder more people could gel with something like that than, say, the abominable new Coca-Cola ads. Because,
what is this?
Yeah, Fortnite Vader is a pale imitation, but it's a silly little toy, and that was kind of the point. What Coke were doing with the recent advert that's pissed people off, well, that's just a cheap imitation of a real thing that we actually had, where it's levels of glitz and glam and
Yeah, it's worse. That's the reason why people are mad. They don't want something to be a downgrade.
detail and lighting are so over the top that it doesn't feel real anymore. That's a huge part of why it comes off uncanny. It makes it seem like the creatives involved are working for the tool, rather than the tool working for them. And that's where COD and Anno are vital to today's story, because these, in my view, aren't really placeholders. I gotta say, allegedly.
They were not. Like, I mean, let's be honest. Like, do you really think that they were placeholders? I mean, come on. How do all these companies make the same mistake over and over? I mean, it's because they don't give a shit. I'll be right back. Give me a second. Sorry.
In my opinion, but you may have heard the term, the purpose of the system is what it does, which does strip away some of the intent and focuses a little bit more on the end product, which here is useful because that's the bloody thing we buy. Because those assets are still in there, even though when you look at them, they are clearly out of place things that feel cheap.
Yeah, they don't look good at all.
Especially
look
in,
like trash.
Call of Duty stuff.
Yep.
Slop. Almost the definition of slop. And it's clear the management of these studios don't care enough to pay for real art in the first place, or maybe thought they could just cut some corners. And then, whenever it came time to ship their game, they didn't care to make what they had better. Sure.
Well, they didn't care about the story either. Like, that's the thing, is that if you see cheap AI generated stuff in a game, it's the same as seeing ugly women in a game. It's a mining canary for the fact that the developer doesn't really care about making the game good. That's the issue. It's not what it is, it's what it means.
Whatever.
That's what
Just
I
do
think.
some Ghibli slop. Let's not think about whether that does or does not fit Call of Duty. Let's not think about making an amazing user experience. Let's just shit out something that people
it's
will
a lot.
recognize and hope that'll do the job. But as if that's not bad enough, I actually think it's a lot more chilling. I think maybe plenty of people here do actually care, but the system that they're in has no room for their caring.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
they got to do what they got to do. And if you ask me, that's what's actually scary here. We've got some of this tech that may end up being genuinely transformative. It seems we're on the cusp of major medical, road safety, knowledge work, and a whole bunch of other improvements. That's the thing, the technology is just a tool. What matters is how we choose to use that tool. And I fear that what could be great progress, and maybe in its best way, could mean more artist tools to make their jobs better, to help them be more creative. I fear that that positive vision will be corrupted by systems of influence that can only see the next cost saving, even most.
I think that's always true. You're always going to have, and this is the problem with any sort of a company that doesn't care about its product, is that any company that doesn't care about its product will outsource and, send everything that they're doing. Like Blizzard did this with Warcraft 3 Reforged, for example, is that like they basically had some random fucking overseas company make the game, and then they put Blizzard's logo on it, and it was horrible. Is that really that making, what do you call it? Is it really that because they did that, is that evidence that outsourcing a video game development for a remake is actually a bad thing? No, I don't think so, because Oblivion did the same thing and it was good. So it's really about whether you give a shit or not. I think that every tool is only as good as its user. So generative AI is the same as outsourcing or the same as anything else, where if you're using it and you're not doing it in a way that is authentic to like what you're making, then it's going to be garbage. Diablo 2 Resurrected is good? Yeah, exactly. So there's plenty of examples of this.
Chillingly, in spite of how everyone involved feels. Because at the end of the day, everyone's just turning up.
Dark Souls Remaster was 100% outsourced. It was really good.
Maybe that's the thing we should really start thinking about here. Rather than getting needlessly angry at each other and devolving into stupid internet
There's
fights
a lot of that.
that just waste everyone's time.
Yep.
So let's shout at each other less and be a little bit more strategic. And speaking of strategy, do you know who's really good at that? Gaben. He's now got himself
Seems
a
that way.
big yacht called the
Demon's Souls
Leviathan.
remake as well?
Yes,
Yeah.
literally.
Bluehole made
but for
that,
you
I
and me,
believe.
it's all about the Steam machine. And that's what you can learn about in this next video.
Yeah, I feel like generative AI being used in video games is inevitable. And the people trying to avoid it will be like the people trying to avoid microtransactions that are just in an increasingly shrinking island until they only have a very limited option of video games. And they end up, this is also another thing that happens, is that video games that you previously played have microtransactions added into them, like World of Warcraft, right? And so after that happens, give the video a like. I thought that was it was a good one, right? Every coder already uses AI. Well, I think a lot of them do. I feel like that's what makes sense, right? And so, yeah. Bellio doesn't know the yachts for research? Yeah, it has to be, right? It's like the people who avoided Photoshop 20 years ago. Well, I think that AI is a little bit different than that, but I think that users and, like especially like game players, they will probably avoid AI until a franchise that they like uses AI, and then they will be okay with it. I think that's what's going to happen is that, and again, every video game boycott is 1 3-minute cinematic away from being over. I've always said this. That every single time that like, oh, players are like, oh, they hate this, they won't accept this, they're mad. No, just put out a new game, make the game good, and they're going to buy the game. That's the only thing that matters. Now, is it going to be maybe worse if you have a bad reputation? Yeah, sure. But like overall, you'll still succeed if you're making a good video game, right? Square Enix is a tool. Square Enix opted to use machine learning instead of AI on Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Well, yeah, I mean, maybe it wasn't ready at that point or they didn't think it would be a good option. I think that's the way with anything. Generative AI in its current form is sloppy. There has to be some game or company that has to crawl out and walk so others can go down the line. I think that the generative AI that you see as sloppy is not the only generative AI in the game. And I think that just because you can detect some forms of AI, like, is anybody actually delusional enough to think that they can see every type of usage of AI in a game? I mean, come on. So it's pretty obvious to me that they're probably using it in tons of other ways too that you just don't know about yet. So yeah, that's the way I see it.